Our confidence is created in phase 2 when things are inconsistent and we're experiencing emotional whiplash and we've got the highest highs and the lowest lows happening within the span of a single meeting. In those moments when we double down and say to ourselves, no problem, I'm a badass, this is emotionally hard, but I've got this. If we are able to get to that place in those moments, that is what is going to create the confidence that stays with us for a lifetime.
Welcome to The Art of Speaking Up, a podcast that helps professional women access the limitless potential that lies within them. I'm your host, Jessica Guzik, and my mission is to help you find that spark inside you that has the power to transform your career in ways you may not have thought possible. I'm so excited that you're here. And now, on to the show.
Welcome to the podcast. I am so excited about today's episode. If you have been struggling with ups and downs in your confidence, and if it feels like as soon as you put yourself in a high pressure or difficult situation, the confidence that you had been feeling previously has all of a sudden disappeared, then today's episode is for you. Today, I'm going to be teaching you something that I like to call the consistency-inconsistency cycle. This is a cycle that we go through anytime we are trying to learn a new skill or uplevel ourselves in any sort of way. When we don't understand the consistency-inconsistency cycle, we tend to self-sabotage our progress without even realizing that's what's happening. But when we do understand this cycle, we have the wisdom and perspective that we need to follow through on our goal of building deep confidence. So today, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be teaching you what the consistency-inconsistency cycle is, how to make sure it doesn't sabotage your efforts to build lasting confidence, and how you can leverage it to achieve that deeper transformation that you are after. So the first thing that we're going to learn together is what is the consistency-inconsistency cycle. So the consistency-inconsistency cycle is a 3-phase cycle, and the best way for me to teach you the 3 phases of the cycle is through a sports metaphor. So we're going to imagine that you are someone who is not athletic at all. You've never picked up a ball or played a sport in your life, and you want to learn how to shoot basketball free throws. So when you first pick up the ball, you've never even held a basketball. You have no idea how to throw it or get it in the basket. So when you get started shooting those free throws, you are going to miss almost all of them. This is because you are in the first phase of the consistency-inconsistency cycle, which I call the consistently bad phase. Now, when I say consistently bad, I don't mean that you are bad or something is wrong with you. It's just that you haven't at all developed the skill of shooting a free throw. So when you toss the ball, we know what's going to happen. It's probably not going to make it into the basket. Now, let's assume that you work on your free throw, and as you're practicing, you begin getting the ball into the basket. You don't get it into the basket every single time you shoot, but you're actually starting to get it in, and that's feeling really exciting to you. If you're starting to get the ball into the basket, you have moved out of the first phase of the cycle where you were consistently bad, and now you're in the second phase of the cycle, which I call inconsistency. Now, even though the word inconsistency can sometimes have a negative connotation, in this specific instance, inconsistency is better than consistency. Because when you were consistent, you were consistently bad. You were consistently not getting the ball in the basket. Now that you're inconsistent, you are sometimes getting the ball in the basket, sometimes missing the basket, but this is an overall improvement from phase 1. And when we enter into the inconsistency phase and we start making some of those free throws, it's a signal that the work we've been doing to grow and practice is beginning to finally pay off. Now, there's one more phase of the cycle. So I want you to imagine that you continue practicing your free throws and you've put in so many reps and you've spent so much time practicing that you now get the ball in the basket nearly every single time you throw the ball. You have become a master of free throws, and you have officially transitioned into the third and final phase of the consistency-inconsistency cycle, which is the phase where you are consistently good. In other words, it's no longer inconsistent, and you're no longer wondering, am I going to get the ball in the basket or am I going to bounce it off of the rim? You now know every time I shoot a free throw, I get the ball in the basket. So to quickly recap the three phases of the consistency-inconsistency cycle, we start off consistently bad. This is where our success rate is 0. Then we move into inconsistency. This is where our success rate rises above 0, but it hasn't quite hit 100%. And then the third and final phase is where we're consistently good, and this is where our success rate starts to inch very close to 100%. Now, this 3-phase cycle doesn't just apply to learning a sport and shooting hoops. It applies to any self-improvement venture that you are embarking on, whether you are trying to speak more effectively, communicate with more confidence, act as more of a leader in the room. This cycle will apply to your growth process. Now, the thing about the consistency-inconsistency cycle is that while it's very easy to understand it intellectually, it can be quite challenging to move through it emotionally. And that's what I want to dig deeper into in today's episode. As we are moving through the consistency-inconsistency cycle, particularly as we enter into the inconsistency phase, things can start to get emotionally volatile, and the risk of us self-sabotaging or giving up on the goals and dreams that matter most to us gets higher and higher. And this is the number one thing that I see getting in the way of people developing the confidence that they want to have in the workplace. It's not that they don't have the capability deep within them to do it. It's that they get stuck in the middle of the consistency-inconsistency cycle and they don't stick it through long enough to get the results and achieve the change that they desire. So for the remainder of today's episode, I'm going to walk you through 3 macro topics. First, I'm going to teach you some basic foundations that you will need if you want to successfully make it to the final phase of the consistency-inconsistency cycle. Then I'm going to share pitfalls and reasons that people often self-sabotage while in this cycle so that you can be aware of these and so that you can make efforts to avoid these. And then finally, I'm going to talk about what it's like when you get to the end of the cycle and you've finally transformed in a way that feels consistent. So let's get started with the foundations. There are 3 very simple foundations that you will want to keep in mind in order to successfully complete the consistency-inconsistency cycle. Number 1, the name of the game is to make it through the middle phase, aka the inconsistency phase. This is a subtle distinction, but it's incredibly important. A lot of times when you're building confidence, what you think about is phase 3. You think about the phase where you finally have the confidence that you want and the skill level that you want, and you are consistently good. And you think to yourself, okay, cool, that's the goal. The goal is to feel confident and do well in the meeting and share my idea effectively and speak with confidence. The problem is that outcome is the last thing that happens in the cycle. So if you go into challenging situations expecting that you should feel super confident and get it perfectly, that's like you going up to the basketball hoop for the first time ever without having ever practiced your free throws and saying to yourself, my goal is to be great at free throws. So now I must pick up this ball and instantly get it into the basket. That sets an unrealistic expectation that's probably going to make you feel frustrated and set you up for failure, because we know from the basketball example that before you can just pick up the ball and shoot it into the basket with ease, you have to first get through the phase where you're inconsistent and you're getting better, but you're still not getting the ball in 100% of the time. Building confidence is no different. And in fact, I would argue building confidence and finding your voice is much harder than shooting free throws. So for us to expect that we will all of a sudden be at the end point and be very good at it isn't realistic for our growth process. And what it does is it makes you feel like you're failing even when you are making progress. It makes it impossible to recognize your progress because you're thinking that it should look perfect because that's the endpoint that you want to be at. So when you're in that messy middle, inconsistent phase where it isn't yet consistent, you think that you've done something wrong when in reality, you are doing something right. You have moved into the second phase. You have gotten closer to the ultimate thing you want. So a reframe that I suggest that you make in your mind that will help you follow through and actually build the confidence is I want you to reframe your goal. And instead of saying, I have to show up perfectly, I have to get it right all of the time, I want you to say, I have to make it through this inconsistency phase so that I can show up strong, so that eventually my confidence and my skill level can be at a point where I get it right consistently and I get it right most of the time. It's a subtle distinction, but you're shifting from my goal is to have the outcome today to my goal is to make it through the process, to stay in it, to keep putting one foot in front of the other until I get to that outcome. That perspective equips you to be psychologically ready for how the process is actually going to feel. And when you're psychologically ready for how the process is going to feel, you are far more likely to be able to power through the process and actually achieve the change and the deeper confidence that you desire. Now, the second foundational thing that will help you make it through to the end of the cycle and build that deep confidence that you are wanting is keeping in mind that even though you haven't yet completed the full consistency-inconsistency cycle when it comes to building confidence and finding your voice, you have completed the cycle in other areas of your life. I'm sure that you can think of elements of your job that used to be hard for you, where you used to be either consistently bad or inconsistent, but where you are now consistently good. So I want you to think back to the first day ever of you being in the workforce. Day one, first ever job, I want you to think of that version of you. And I want you to imagine that that version of you has to show up today and execute the job and the role that you have today. If that happened, things would probably get really messy. This is good news. This is an encouraging thing because what it means is that you have already completed multiple consistency-inconsistency cycles across various components of your job. There are elements of your job that you are consistently good at because you stuck with them long enough to build that deeper skill. This is evidence that you are capable of completing consistency-inconsistency cycles. You are capable of being consistently bad at something and then becoming inconsistent and then staying in that inconsistency phase long enough to finally become consistently good. When you keep that in mind, you have so much more fuel and motivation and so much more belief that you will actually make it to the other end. This helps you stay in it long enough to actually see the change. Now, this third foundational insight is the most important of them all. And if you only take one thing away from this episode, let it be this. When it comes to the consistency-inconsistency cycle and those 3 phases that I taught you, which are consistently bad, inconsistent, and consistently good, when it comes to those 3 phases, the middle phase, inconsistency, is the most emotionally intense and sometimes the most unpleasant. This can be a little bit counterintuitive because often we think, wait, wouldn't it be the consistently bad phase of the cycle that feels the worst? And you wouldn't be wrong to ask that question. But there's a key distinction between consistently bad versus inconsistent that makes inconsistency more psychologically painful than consistently bad. And that is the fact that when we're consistently bad, things are predictable. And when we are inconsistent, things are unpredictable. So if you're consistently bad at shooting the ball into the basket, there's no emotional roller coaster. You know that you're going to throw the ball and miss. So there's no hope that is being let down every time you miss. And in fact, because you know you're always going to miss, you're probably not truly invested in actually throwing the ball. You're not really trying, you're not really caring because you are certain that the outcome is going to be a negative outcome. So there's a sense of disengagement and predictability that makes the consistently bad phase less emotionally volatile and less intense than the inconsistency phase. When you're in the inconsistency phase, all of a sudden there's hope that you might get the ball in the basket. And with that hope, there is the grief and frustration and disappointment and resentment that happens when you miss the basket. Those difficult, intense feelings aren't even on the table for us when we're in the consistently bad phase because we know exactly how things are going to turn out. But when we have hope that things could turn out well, and then we are faced with the reality that things are inconsistent and sometimes things don't turn out well even though we knew that they could, it hurts more. It hurts more deeply. There's disappointment there. And not just disappointment, but there's also whiplash because one minute I'm getting the ball in the basket and I'm celebrating, and the next minute I miss the basket and I'm angry and frustrated and disappointed and questioning if I'm even making progress. This is a very important reality to understand if you're interested in seriously upleveling your confidence or seriously upleveling how you show up in the world. It's really important to know that when you embark on that process, you are moving into the inconsistency phase where the emotional experience is more volatile. And this is one of the reasons that I often see that prevents people from saying yes to their goals and dreams and going after the growth that they deeply want. They don't go after it because the familiar, known nature of being consistently bad feels better to them in the present moment than the uncertainty and the potential disappointment and the emotional volatility that we experience when we move into inconsistency. However, when you're making that trade-off and asking yourself, is this process worth it to me? The thing that you need to remember is that that inconsistency phase doesn't last forever. There's going to be a point where your skill level is going to reach a critical tipping point where you're now far more consistent in your results, and future you will thank current you for having the determination and the guts to stay in it, because now future you gets to be in phase 3, consistently good, which we know is way better than phase 1, consistently bad. So those are the 3 foundations of the consistency-inconsistency cycle. And I want to go even deeper. So for those of you who want an in-depth, layered learning of this cycle, for the remainder of today's episode, I'm going to be diving into the specific causes of self-sabotage within this cycle, which I've started to hint at, but I have a lot more to say about. And then I'm going to talk about some of the growth and benefits that we get to enjoy when we make it to phase 3 of the cycle. We're going to take a super quick break, and I will catch you on the other side. If you're listening to this episode and thinking, this inconsistency phase is exactly where I get stuck, then I want to invite you to come work with me so that together we can tackle it head on. Inside my signature program, the Art of Speaking Up Academy, we work on quieting that voice in your head that second guesses you constantly so that you can walk into any meeting and represent your ideas with genuine confidence. The Art of Speaking Up Academy is more than just surface level self-help tips. Inside this program, you will do the deeper psychological work that will help you build confidence that sticks so that having a strong voice in the room just becomes your new normal. Get the support and structure you need by joining me in the next cohort. To join us, add yourself to the waitlist by clicking the link in the show notes, and you will be first to find out when a spot is available. And now, back to the episode. Okay, so I've taught you what the consistency-inconsistency cycle is, and I've shared with you the basics of how to successfully move through the cycle. Now I want to do a bit of a deep dive on self-sabotage. There are a few different places in the consistency-inconsistency cycle where self-sabotage is more likely, and I want to point those out to you so that you can spot those in your own life and see the instances where you are holding yourself back from the actual potential that you have deeper inside of you. So the first way that self-sabotage can happen is when we choose to stay in the consistently bad phase and we don't even venture out into inconsistency. And something that's very interesting about the human mind is that often we prefer predictability and consistency, even if that predictability is predictably negative. Uncertainty and unpredictability can be so scary for our minds that often we will choose the proverbial devil that we know rather than venture off into something that is better but unpredictable. The way that you know that you are doing this is if building confidence and becoming the version of you who you want to be feels like an abstract theory that is fun to think about and ideate on in your head, but doesn't feel like anything that you would ever actually bring into your real life and treat seriously as a goal. If this is happening, it's likely because the predictability and the comfort of being in the consistently bad phase has become a source of stability for you. And it feels very scary for you to venture into the inconsistency phase and face the instability that comes with that. Now, often when we are staying in the consistently bad phase, we are underestimating how much growth and happiness and fulfillment we will experience when we finally make it to phase 3, the phase where we are consistently good. And in our mind, we're thinking that our current state overall is the better option than us moving forward into inconsistency and pursuing that final phase of consistently good. And if this is happening, the most important thing you can do is to make that decision conscious and bring it to the surface and ask yourself, what is more important to me? Is it more important to me for things to stay the same and be predictable and for me to know exactly how every day is going to feel? Even if I don't like how it feels, at least I get to predict it and know how it'll feel. Is that more important to me, or is growth more important to me? And that's a decision that only you can make. For me personally, I always choose growth because even though it can feel scary and inconsistent and unstable on the path to getting there, for me, the stagnance and the boredom that I experience if I'm not doing that starts to become intolerable in my life. And as we get deeper into the episode, I'm going to share some thoughts on why it is worth it to move forward and face the inconsistency and go for it and pursue your dreams. But first, I want to talk about the second source of self-sabotage, which typically happens once we've moved from the consistently bad phase into the inconsistency phase. So it's very common for people to experience a wake-up call and realize, oh my gosh, my life is passing me by. My career is passing me by. I'm not becoming the person I want to be. I'm not showing up as the leader I aspire to. I'm not developing the voice that I want to have. It is time for me to break this pattern and actually pursue growth. And they start working on their confidence and making efforts to take up more space. And as a result, they move into the second phase of the cycle, which is inconsistency. Now, I alluded to this earlier in the episode, but it is so important that we need to talk about it here in the self-sabotage section. As soon as we move into inconsistency, the highs become higher and the lows become lower. The emotional volatility gets more intense, and this can cause people to give up for one of two big reasons. The first reason is that they weren't prepared for the inconsistency phase of the cycle. They assumed that they would skip that phase and go straight to consistently good. And when that didn't happen, and when they faced the inconsistency, they began to worry and wonder, is something wrong with me? And that thought, is something wrong with me, can be such a terrifying thought that as soon as it pops up, we completely retreat from whatever was causing that thought to come up in the first place. So what this looks like is you say, I'm ready to double down on my growth process. I can't wait to build confidence. Then you start taking action to build confidence and you're inconsistent because that's the second phase of the cycle. But in your head, you were thinking, oh, I should have been good at this right away. This shouldn't be hard. I should just be able to do this quickly. And then you start to think, oh my God, something's wrong with me. It's not like this for other people. Something's happening. Something's wrong with me. There's something with my personality. I can't make this happen. And those thoughts become so scary that your mind starts to say, oh my gosh, like what if something is deeply wrong with me? And what if this process is now outing that and putting that out in the open? And I'm going to learn things about myself that I will feel shameful about for the rest of my life. I have to stop. I have to stop this crazy idea that I had to build this quote unquote confidence. And I need to go back to how things were before I embarked on this scary, terrifying process. So what is happening is we're assuming that the inconsistency isn't a normal part of the process. We think it's just happening to us because something is wrong with us. And we become so scared of seeing all the things that are wrong with us that we retreat from the process entirely. So that is the first self-sabotage pattern that can come up. The second self-sabotage pattern that can come up stems from the intensity of the emotional whiplash. As the highs are higher, the lows become lower. So in the basketball example, when I start to improve my free throw and I start making those shots, but I'm still inconsistent, the shots that I miss when I'm in the inconsistency phase are going to sting more and cause more emotional pain than the shots that I missed when I was in the consistently bad phase. Because now I'm on an emotional roller coaster where I have an expectation of making the shot. So when I miss the shot, it is that much more painful. And when I feel that pain, one of two things might happen. I might say, this feeling is so unpleasant. This isn't worth it. Like, forget it. I don't want to shoot hoops anymore. Or I might say, this is ridiculous. This feels so bad. And what if I stay in this phase forever? What if this is just how it's going to be, where half the time I'm great at this and half the time I suck at this? This is awful. I don't want to continue this feeling. I don't like this emotional roller coaster. Let me just back away and stop. So these are both reasons that we give up on our own progress before we have even given it enough time to play out. And these are very normal, predictable human behaviors. The human mind doesn't like uncertainty. It doesn't like to experience big swings in emotions. It really struggles to process when we are experiencing positive emotions and negative emotions within a very small span of time. These are all things that create enormous amounts of internal discomfort and tension. And when we experience that internal discomfort and tension, we have two options. We can pull the plug or press the kill switch and say, I am done, game over, I don't want to do this anymore. Or we can double down and we can say, wait a minute, this is exactly what is supposed to happen in this process. This is the exact friction and the exact fear and discomfort that Jess said was part of the growth process. And in that moment, we can decide to keep going for two reasons. Number one, because we are so motivated by the goal of making it to the third phase of the cycle where we are consistently good. But number two, because we know that learning to work through the emotional volatility of the inconsistency phase of the cycle is where the actual confidence is built. And this brings me to one of the most important points in this episode. I know I've already said that, but there's a lot of really important things in this episode. But the point that this brings us to is that our confidence is created in the instability of the middle phase. Our confidence is created in the inconsistency. And a lot of times we think to ourselves that our confidence is going to get created in phase 3 when we're consistently good and we get it right all the time. No. Our confidence is created in phase 2 when things are inconsistent and we're experiencing emotional whiplash and we've got the highest highs and the lowest lows happening within the span of a single meeting or a single slide that we're presenting. In those moments when we double down and say to ourselves, no problem, I'm a badass, this is emotionally hard, but I've got this, I can handle this, I will keep moving forward. If we are able to get to that place in those moments, that is what is going to create the confidence that stays with us for a lifetime. When we endure through the emotional volatility and we double down on our commitment to ourselves and our growth, rather than giving up in the moments where things feel really hard, not only do we improve our own ability to navigate through discomfort, but more importantly, we start to experience a shift in identity. We watch ourselves handle hard things, and all of a sudden we see, oh, I'm the type of person that doubles down when things get hard. I'm the type of person that sticks with my goals, even when I have a fail and things are feeling unstable and inconsistent. I'm the type of person that keeps taking up space in the meeting, even when I'm not doing it perfectly, and even when I don't yet have the confidence that I desire. And when we see over and over, I am the type of person who stays in it when it's hard, we begin to feel so unstoppable and like such a badass inside for watching ourselves endure through such emotionally difficult circumstances. And it is that identity shift and that experience of sticking with the emotionally hard thing, even when part of us wants to abandon it, that helps us grow that deep, stable, steady, unshakable confidence. What so many people don't realize is that confidence is born out of instability. Confidence comes as we learn to get really good at navigating instability. And fun fact, that's exactly what good leadership is. Good leadership is the ability to successfully navigate instability. So the confidence that you want and the leadership skill that you want comes from the same thing. And when you realize that, and you realize that the inconsistency is a valuable and irreplaceable input for your confidence and your skills as a leader, you will no longer want to skip over it or avoid it. You will want to embrace it because of the potential that it has to help you grow. And what is so beautiful about this process and about the consistency-inconsistency cycle is that by the time you get to phase 3, consistently good, and your confidence is on lock, and you're no longer intimidated by that meeting, and you just feel like such an unstoppable, badass leader in your job, that feeling that you have will be rock solid, unflappable, and unshakable because you know how much inconsistency you had to move through to get there. Repeatedly facing inconsistency creates internal strength and stability. And listen, there's a part of me that wishes that I could tell you that it's just super easy and that confidence can be built in a day and that you don't have to put yourself at risk or do anything hard or experience ups and downs in your emotions. But the truth is, number one, that's not how it works. And anyone that's telling you that you can transform quickly and with minimal effort probably doesn't have your best interests at heart. But number two, it's really important to think about, is that what I want? Do I really want the easy way out? Do I really want to become someone different without actually experiencing all of the layers of challenge that helped me evolve into that person? And for me personally, I want my confidence to be deep and robust because it was earned, because I did the tough inner work of learning to face the inconsistency and ride out difficult emotional waves. In my opinion, that is what makes someone a badass, and that is what makes someone a really unstoppable and super admired leader. And if that is who you want to become, and if you are realizing that your next up level involves you learning to face the obstacles and face the adversity so that you can build confidence that is enduring and lasting, this is the exact work that I help my clients with. When I am working with you, I am helping you develop a voice in the room that is strong and confident. And the absolute best way to do that is to build real confidence from the inside out. When you feel genuinely, unstoppably confident inside, it translates to the way that you speak on the outside every single time. That is the work that I do in the Art of Speaking Up Academy, and I would love to invite you to join me in the next cohort if you are ready to do this work. The absolute best way to join this program is to add yourself to the waitlist by clicking the link in the show notes. Several of the more recent cohorts have sold out behind the scenes before I've had the chance to open doors publicly. And that is because I always offer spots to those on the waitlist first. Plus, when you join the waitlist, you qualify for exclusive waitlist-only bonuses, like a free bonus workshop or a free private session with me. So I don't recommend skipping the waitlist. Add yourself today by clicking the link in the show notes or going to jessguzikcoaching.com/academy. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. I had so much fun teaching this, and I'm already fired up about the next one. So let's get to it. I will catch you in next week's episode. Have an amazing week. Bye.